The war ended the way most things ended for humans, not with a parade, but with a form that needed 3 signatures and a wait time of 6 to 8 standard cycles. One day he was coordinating fleet rotations and casualty projections, the next he was standing in a neutral-colored office being told to remain available for post-conflict processing. No cheers, no medals yet, just a chair that was slightly too small and a smell like recycled air and regret. They called it a post-galactic conflict compensation review. He already hated it. He sat with his arms folded, uniform still creased from weeks of sleeping in it, listening as the tri-species panel shuffled data slates. The war had taken years off his life and added a permanent tension behind his eyes. He wasn't a hero in his own mind. He was a man who followed orders, made compromises, and learned exactly how much pressure he could take before something cracked. Apparently, that made him notable. The lead official cleared their throat in a way that suggested importance. "Commander, your performance during extended engagement periods has been exceptional." He snorted before he could stop himself. "If you say so." Another panelist leaned forward. "Your endurance metrics were far beyond projected human averages." That earned an eyebrow raise. Endurance. Great. This was already going where he didn't want it to. He'd spent the war proving he could stay awake longer, eat worse food, and keep functioning when everyone else needed rest. He hadn't realized that would become a talking point. "We've reviewed how you handled sustained pressure," the official continued. "Especially in environments where emotional strain was intense." He shifted in his seat. "You mean when everything was on fire and people were screaming?" A pause. Notes were taken. Far too many notes. "Yes," the official said carefully. "Among other circumstances." That was when the door opened. She didn't enter dramatically. No music, no spotlight. Just a soft footstep and a presence that immediately drew attention. Vulpine, unmistakably so. Tall, fur the color of warm copper, ears alert but relaxed, eyes sharp with the kind of intelligence that made people nervous. She wore the neutral insignia of the Interstellar Evaluation Corps, which somehow made her more intimidating than armor ever could. "This is Evaluator Selrix," the panel announced. "She will be overseeing the next phase of your review." He looked from her to them. "Next phase?" Selrix inclined her head slightly, gaze already assessing him like a problem that might be interesting. "Your file is extensive. That's one word for it," he muttered. The panel continued, blissfully unaware of the tension blooming in the room. "Due to the prolonged nature of your service, standard debriefing is insufficient. You have been selected for an integrated performance assessment." There it was. Integrated. He'd heard that word used exactly once before, and it hadn't ended well. Selrix stepped closer, close enough that he could smell something faintly citrus beneath the sterile station air. "My role is to observe how you function outside combat parameters," she said. "Decision-making, impulse control, recovery habits." Impulse control. Fantastic. "And," she added, tail flicking once, "how you behave when expectations are misunderstood." He opened his mouth to ask what the hell that meant, but the panel was already wrapping up. "Effective immediately," the lead official said. "Evaluator Selrix will be assigned to you." Assigned. That word hit harder than it should have. Around the room, there was a subtle shift. Glances exchanged. Whispers that weren't as quiet as they thought. He caught fragments, human customs, post-war bonding, rumors he'd heard but never believed. He leaned forward. "Assigned how, exactly?" Selrix answered before the panel could. "I will be accompanying you during your reintegration period. Monitoring stress responses. Testing limits." "Testing limits?" "Of course." He let out a slow breath. "You people really know how to phrase things." Her lips curved just enough to suggest amusement. "You have no idea how your species sounds on paper." They dismissed him moments later, handing him a slate thick with clauses and disclaimers. He barely skimmed it before one line made his stomach drop. Evaluation duration, indefinite, pending satisfactory performance. Indefinite. Pending. performance. He looked up. This is a joke, right? Selrix tilted her head. Why would it be? Because it sounds like you're telling me the war ended and now I'm being evaluated for something entirely different. Her eyes held his, steady and unreadable. From our perspective, Commander, this may be the most important assignment of your career. That didn't help. At all. As they walked down the corridor together, silence stretched between them, thick with assumptions either of them had voiced. He was painfully aware of how this must look to anyone watching, a tired human officer and a Vulpine evaluator walking side by side after a closed-door meeting. He could already imagine the rumors writing themselves. So, he said finally, because silence made him itch. Just to be clear, this isn't some kind of reward. She stopped walking and looked at him fully now. Do you believe you require one? He hesitated. Then, honestly, no. Good, she said, resuming her pace. Neither do we. That should have been reassuring. Somehow it wasn't. As they reached his assigned quarters, Selrix made a note on her slate. We'll begin with baseline observation, she said. I'll be monitoring your daily routines. Sleep patterns. Stress outlets. He swallowed. You're very thorough. It's my job, she replied. The galaxy is very curious about how humans handle prolonged engagement without losing themselves. He thought about the war, about the compromises, about the things he'd learned to lock away just to keep going. And if you don't like what you see? Her gaze softened, just slightly. Then we adjust expectations. For the first time since the war ended, he felt something unfamiliar tighten in his chest. Not fear. Not relief. Something like being seen. Great, he thought. They ended a galactic war, and now this was the test. By the third day, he realized two things. First, the galaxy had no idea how human workplace evaluations actually worked. Second, Selrix took her job far too seriously for his peace of mind. She started every cycle the same way, a neutral greeting, a slate in hand, and a look that suggested she was measuring him against a standard he hadn't been given. She followed him everywhere with professional distance and deeply unprofessional wording. Report, she said that morning, without preamble. He blinked at her over a cup of aggressively bad station coffee. About what? Your morning performance. He nearly choked. You can't just say it like that. She flicked an ear. Like what? Never mind. She made a note anyway. The evaluation questions came steadily, always delivered in a calm tone that made them sound worse than they were. How long could he maintain focus before fatigue set in? How did he respond when directives conflicted with personal comfort? What strategies did he use when pressure was sustained longer than expected? Every answer he gave made the station staff stare harder. I take breaks when I need to, he said at one point. Hydrate. Reset expectations. Selrix nodded. Responsible pacing. Many species attempt to push through until collapse. Yeah, that's called burnout, he replied. We're big fans of not doing that anymore. She paused her slate. Not anymore? He shrugged. We learn. Eventually. That answer circulated faster than it should have. By midday, he noticed people glancing at them and whispering, eyes darting between Selrix's slate and his hands. One alien nearly walked into a wall while staring. At lunch, Selrix joined him uninvited, which was apparently part of the assessment. She observed as he unwrapped a nutrient bar with the enthusiasm of a man who'd eaten too many of them already. You consume this willingly? She asked. It's cheap, filling, and doesn't judge me. She tilted her head. Humans tolerate disappointment remarkably well. That's one word for it. She recorded that too. The questions kept coming, each one a linguistic landmine. How did he handle prolonged engagement with a single partner? What did he do when expectations weren't met? How did he recover after a particularly demanding period? Sleep, he said flatly. Food. Silence. Interesting, she murmured. Many assume humans seek stimulation after intensity. He snorted. Anyone who says that's never filled out a debrief at 4 in the morning. That night, he discovered the evaluation logs had been partially shared with oversight committees. Oversight committees that clearly did not understand human phrasing. He overheard one alien whisper. The human claims he prefers silence after exertion. Another replied. Fascinating restraint. He rubbed his face. This is getting out of hand. Selrix didn't look up from her slate. Your species' terminology is evocative. That's not our fault. It is partially, she said. You choose words like stamina, handling pressure, release. He groaned. We mean them literally. Of course, she said, in a tone that suggested the galaxy did not believe that for a second. The next evaluation session was worse. She asked him to walk her through a high-stress command scenario. He described balancing limited resources, managing conflicting personalities, and keeping everyone functional despite exhaustion. Selrix summarized aloud. You maintained control despite resistance and achieved completion without force. A nearby clerk dropped their slate. He pointed at Selrix. That right there. You have to hear how that sounds. She glanced at the clerk, then back at him. The clerk appears flustered. Because everyone thinks you're talking about something else. Her ears twitched. Something else? He hesitated. Explaining alien misinterpretation of innuendo to an alien felt like a trap. Let's just say, your reports are being read creatively. Selrix considered that. Creativity is not a metric I was assigned to monitor. Well, it's happening anyway. The climax came during the formal mid-evaluation briefing. He was seated at a long table while Selrix presented her findings to a mixed-species panel. He had the sinking feeling of a man about to hear his own words used against him. Subject demonstrates exceptional endurance, Selrix began. He remains functional under extended pressure and prioritizes consent-based cooperation over domination. The room went silent. Someone coughed. Subject is attentive to boundaries, she continued. He adjusts intensity when discomfort is observed and disengages when necessary. He slowly lowered his head into his hands. Most notably, Selrix said unfazed, he shows restraint. Despite possessing significant capacity, he does not impose it unnecessarily. A murmur rippled through the panel. One official cleared their throat. Evaluator, are you certain of these interpretations? Yes, Selrix replied. I observed them personally. Every eye in the room snapped to him. He felt heat creep up his neck. I swear to you, this is about leadership. Selrix finally looked confused. What else would it be about? The silence deepened. That was the moment he understood. The galaxy wasn't projecting because of him. They were projecting because they couldn't imagine power without indulgence. Couldn't imagine endurance without excess. Couldn't imagine a species that learned restraint the hard way and called it professionalism. Selrix broke the silence. There appears to be a misunderstanding. No kidding, he muttered. She turned back to the panel. The human is being evaluated for command ethics and emotional regulation. One official hesitated. Then, the terminology? Selrix's tail flicked. Is standard human corporate language. The room erupted into overlapping chatter. Afterward, as they walked away, he exhaled sharply. You could have warned me. She regarded him thoughtfully. Your reactions were informative. Glad my suffering helped. It did, she said calmly. You maintained composure despite embarrassment. Many would have lashed out. He paused. That's a good thing? Yes, she said. It suggests maturity. He sighed. Great. I'm mature. Selrix made one final note. Performance review ongoing. By the next cycle, the rumors had outpaced the official reports. That was the first sign things were about to go wrong. The second was the emergency notice flashing across every public terminal. Mandatory multi-species assembly. Attendance required. He stared at the message, then at Selrix. Tell me this isn't about me. She didn't answer immediately, which was never a good sign. Your evaluation has attracted Interest. That's one way to put it. As they moved through the station, the atmosphere had shifted. Conversation stopped when they passed. A pair of avians whispered behind a decorative pillar. A hulking reptilian delegate nodded at him with what looked dangerously like respect. He leaned closer to Selrix. "Why are they looking at me like that?" "Your reputation has evolved," she said. "I didn't do anything." "From their perspective," she replied. "That may be the most concerning part." The assembly chamber was packed. Species that barely tolerated sharing oxygen were now crammed together, all focused on the central platform. He took his place beside Selrix, acutely aware that every movement he made was being catalogued by dozens of eyes. The presiding moderator wasted no time. "We are here to address allegations regarding post-war human compensation practices." His stomach dropped. "Allegations?" A tall crystalline being spoke next. "It has come to our attention that humans are being granted exclusive interpersonal assets as a result of combat performance." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Another voice cut in, sharp and offended. "If this is a method of leverage, it violates at least 6 interspecies accords." He leaned towards Selrix. "They think you're an asset." She didn't look pleased. "I am aware." The moderator gestured toward the display, which lit up with excerpts from Selrix's reports. Every line was technically accurate. Every line sounded catastrophically wrong when stripped of context. "Exceptional stamina under prolonged engagement. Maintains control when partners resist. Prioritizes consent-based cooperation." The chamber erupted. "That is domination language," someone shouted. "No," another countered. "That is restraint. That's worse." He raised his hands. "Can I say something?" The noise died down just enough for him to speak. "You're misunderstanding what those words mean to humans." A delegate sneered. "We understand them perfectly." He winced. "That's the problem." Selrix stepped forward then, tail steady, voice clear. "The human subject is being evaluated for leadership stability, not indulgence." A few beings looked unconvinced. One asked, "Then why assign a Vulpine evaluator?" Selrix didn't hesitate. "Because my species is adept at detecting manipulation and coercion." That caused another stir. "And," she continued, "because humans are uniquely difficult to assess. They normalize pressure. They mask fatigue with humor. They use language imprecisely." He nodded. "That last part is very true." The crystalline delegate turned its faceted gaze on him. "Are you denying that this arrangement benefits you?" He considered lying. "It would have been easier." "It benefits me the way a mirror benefits you," he said. "It shows things you don't always want to look at." Silence followed. Not hostile this time. Curious. A smaller delegate spoke up. "Then why has your species allowed these interpretations to spread?" He sighed. "Because correcting everyone all the time is exhausting. And because, honestly, we didn't think anyone would assume this much." Selrix added, "The assumption reveals more about the observer than the subject." That landed harder than anything else, said that cycle. The moderator conferred with several advisors before speaking again. "There is concern that human restraint is being misinterpreted as latent excess." He shrugged. "Welcome to being human." That earned a few confused looks. "You see power," he continued, "and you assume we want to use it all the time. But surviving the war taught us something. Just because you can doesn't mean you should." Selrix glanced at him then, something like approval in her eyes. The chamber quieted. The outrage gave way to discomfort. Not because they were offended, but because they were beginning to understand. A reptilian delegate finally said, "You endured years of conflict, and chose moderation afterward?" "Yes," he replied simply. "That's called growing up." The moderator cleared their throat. "Then the evaluation?" Selrix spoke before he could. "Is proceeding as intended. However, I recommend revising the language of human reports before further misunderstandings arise." Several beings nodded quickly. One added, "For safety." He couldn't argue with that. As the assembly dissolved, the tension eased, replaced by something more awkward. Respect, maybe? Or confusion? Possibly both. They walked out together, the corridor quieter now. Fewer stares. More thoughtful glances. He broke the silence. So, that went well? It did not escalate into sanctions, Cyrix said. That qualifies as success. I'll take it. She slowed her pace. Your explanation was effective. He shrugged. I'm good at talking my way out of trouble. That is another noted human trait. They stopped outside his quarters. Cyrix reviewed her slate one last time, then looked up. Your evaluation has entered a new phase. He groaned. Of course it has. This phase focuses on consistency, she said. Whether your restraint is situational or intrinsic. He met her gaze. And how do you tell the difference? By observing what you do when no one is watching, she replied. He considered that. That feels unfair. Most accurate assessments are. She turned to leave, then paused. For what it is worth, you have altered several assumptions today. About me? About humans. That hit deeper than he expected. Good, he said quietly. We could use fewer assumptions. Cyrix nodded once. Performance review continues. As she walked away, he leaned against the door and exhaled. The war had tested his endurance. This was testing something else entirely. And somehow, he suspected it mattered more. The evaluation ended without ceremony, which felt appropriate. No alarms, no assemblies, no observers hiding behind decorative plants. Just a notification waiting on his slate when he woke up, blinking softly like it had all the time in the universe. Final assessment ready. He stared at it longer than necessary. After everything, part of him expected another misunderstanding, another clarification session where half the galaxy learned something uncomfortable about itself. Instead, the message was short. Too short. Cyrix arrived an hour later, slate tucked under one arm, expression neutral but not distant. That alone set his nerves on edge. So, he said, leaning against the counter with a mug of coffee he no longer pretended to enjoy. This is where you tell me whether I pass or fail. There is no failure, she said. Only conclusions. That's somehow worse. She ignored the comment. Your evaluation is complete. He waited. She seemed to be doing that on purpose. And? He pressed. You were rated exceptionally stable under prolonged pressure, she said. You demonstrated restraint, adaptability, and ethical consistency. He exhaled. That sounds good? It is, she confirmed. Most species escalate when tested. You moderated. Years of practice, he replied. And a deep fear of paperwork. She made a small sound that might have been amusement. Your file has already been circulated as a reference case. He winced. For what? For post-conflict rehabilitation, she said. Specifically, how humans recover without excess. He rubbed the back of his neck. So the galaxy finally understands this wasn't about whatever they thought it was. They understand, Cyrix said carefully, that humans interpret strength differently. That's a relief. However, she added, and there it was, there is one outstanding matter. He closed his eyes briefly. Of course there is. Cyrix activated her slate, projecting a brief summary. It was clinical, concise, and thankfully free of loaded phrasing. At the bottom was a recommendation line. Evaluator reassignment requested. He frowned. That's you? Yes. And it says voluntary. Yes. And ongoing. Yes. He looked up. You're requesting to stay assigned to me? She met his gaze steadily. I am requesting reassignment to a joint advisory role. That's not the same thing. No, she agreed. It is not. He took a slow breath. You're not obligated. I am aware. Then why? Cyrix considered him for a long moment. Because your species presents an anomaly. You endure extremes and then choose limitation. You possess capacity and opt for control. That contradiction is informative. He gave a tired smile. You could have just said interesting. In my culture, she replied, interest implies intention. That landed with more weight than anything else she'd said. He set his mug down. Just to be clear, this isn't some kind of reward. Her ears flicked. Do you believe I would accept that framing? No, he admitted. But the galaxy is adjusting, she said. Slowly. He nodded. Story of humanity. There was a pause, comfortable this time. No tension, no assumptions hanging in the air. So what does a joint advisory role look like? He asked. I observe, Sarek said. You advise. Occasionally, we correct misunderstandings before they become incidents. That sounds dangerously like a job. It is, she confirmed. With boundaries. Good, he said. I'm very into those. She actually smiled then. Not wide. Not performative. Just enough to show approval. Later that cycle, the official notice went out. Carefully worded. Painfully precise. It clarified that humans were not awarded companions, assets, or incentives. They were assigned evaluators, advisors, and, when necessary, mirrors. The reaction was mixed. Some species were disappointed. Others were relieved. A few looked genuinely unsettled by the idea that restraint could be cultivated instead of enforced. He watched the commentary scroll past on a public terminal, shaking his head. They really wanted this to be something else. They projected, Sarek said. Projection is common among species and used to limitation. Yeah, he replied. We learned that one the hard way. As days passed, the whispers faded. Not entirely, but enough. The story shifted. Less about what humans were given. More about what they refused to take. One delegate summed it up during an informal briefing. Humans won the war, and then declined the spoils. He corrected them gently. We just chose different ones. Selrix updated her reports accordingly. On the final day of her original assignment window, she stood at his doorway again, slate in hand. This is where you leave, he said, not quite asking. This is where the role changes, she replied. He nodded. I'm glad it was you. She inclined her head. So am I. As she turned to go, he added, for what it's worth, I never felt evaluated the way everyone assumed. She paused. And how did you feel? Seen, he said. That earned him a long look. Then a nod. The galaxy would keep misunderstanding humans. That wasn't new. But this time, the record was there. Clear. Boring. Accurate. After the Galactic War, they gave him a Vulpine woman. Not as a prize. Not as payment. But as proof that humanity's most dangerous trait wasn't desire. It was restraint.